All right, as you can see, we start off with a question here: who took my upside? And we're actually going to talk about index annuity option pricing, and we're going to understand the dynamics of that. And we are today, it's August 30th 2011, and the 10-year treasury is it's just below 2%. It's broke through that barrier, so it's actually at 1.98 the last time I looked a few minutes ago. One of the things that we need to understand before we get to how an option is priced, we need to understand how an insurance company prices themselves internally. All right. So if we have a situation where you have an insurance company, okay, and they are issuing all kinds of policies, index annuity policies and fixed annuities and so forth, and somebody gives them $25,000 and somebody else gives them $100,000 and somebody else gives them $500,000. The insurance company takes all this money and they take this and they buy a bond portfolio. And just so you know, an insurance company is not looking for yield, they are buying this portfolio for safety. Okay, that's their main priority, is safety. And so in today's environment, with the 10-year treasury just below 2, I'm going to use a round number, and I think it's a fair number, is that given investment grade bonds and so forth, that the overall bond portfolio, the insurance company is probably getting somewhere close to 4%. All right, it's probably a little bit below that, but just for math purposes, we're going to keep it at 4. Now, an insurance company historically, they have an operating spread. Now, you're going to see this word spread another time here, so I've got to give a better definition of spread here. And what we're talking about here on this spread, this is the cost of operating an insurance company. Okay, so what are the main things that go under here? Well, you have your regular expenses, right? Your light bills and your rent and all the buildings and all that stuff of an insurance company, and then you have your commissions that you pay to not only the salespeople but your different marketing organizations, and then you have your profit, right? So there's we could go endless number of different items, but the point here is that this spread here is what it takes to run an insurance company, and that number historically has been right around 2%. So if our bond portfolio is yielding 4 and it costs us 2% to run the company, that leaves us with a net 2%. So what happens to this net 2%? Well, you have your policyholder. Policyholder, and let's say they have it's $100,000 that they put in there. This 2% right here is what's the declared interest rate to the investor from the insurance company. Okay. In the case of an index annuity, the policyholder gets a choice of what they want to do with this 2%. Now, if it was just a straight fixed annuity, their only option is they can just accumulate interest inside there. Okay, so if they have 100,000, they get 2%. So next year they have 102, and then the next year they will get 2% on 102. And you can do that with an index annuity. But you can also take some or all of your money, and you can have the insurance company purchase an option for you in the markets, and we're going to get into that in a second. So the key here is that when you buy an option, you're doing it with your interest credit. You're not doing it with your principal. All right. So why don't we, before we go any further, let's define let's get a definition of an option so everybody is on the same page. Okay, so by definition, an option is the right. It's the right, not an obligation. It's the right, not an obligation, to purchase a stated stock at a stated date in the future at a predetermined price. So let's just go through an exercise here to understand. So let's say that the stated stock in this case is going to be the S&P 500 index. That's what we're going to buy. And here we are at August 30th today, so it's August 30th, 2011. And let's say that the S&P is trading at 1,060. All right, these are 1 year options, so our stated date in the future is going to be August 30th, 2012. All right, so let's say August 30th, 2012 that the S&P went up. It closed at 1,166. All right, so let's go through this. The definition of an option is the right, but not the obligation, to purchase a stated stock, the S&P 500, at a stated date in the future, August 30th, 2012, at a predetermined price. Here's the predetermined price, 1,060. So if this is the stated price and it's gone up, in fact this is a 10% gain, we would exercise this option. We would, in other words, we'd buy the option at 10,060, immediately sell it at 1,166, and take our gain of 10%. Okay, now what we're going to actually learn here is in an index annuity you don't get this whole 10%, but let's just pretend you do, so you understand what happens in this situation where we had our $100,000, right? We purchased this option and we made 10%, or $10,000. So now we have $110,000 in the beginning of our second year. We then get 2% multiplied times that, because remember, this is inside the policy. The insurance company is now going to give us another 2%. So instead of $2,000 to work with, which we had last year, we're going to have $2,200 to go and buy an option with. Okay. Now, let's say this third year, this would be 2013. The S&P drops, right? Let's say it goes down to 950, right? So we started at 1,166 and it goes down to 950. All right, let's go through our definition again. It's the right, but not the obligation, to purchase stated stock, the S&P 500, at a stated date in the future, 2013, at a predetermined price. Here, well, this is a loss. This is a loss, right? This is probably a negative 20% loss. Why would we buy something here to only sell it at a loss? So what we would do here is, because we are not obligated, we would simply allow this option to expire. Okay? Now, what happens up here? What's going on? Well, we got 0 credited, so our account balance is here, right? This was our account value at the beginning of our second year. It's now the end of our second year. We got 0 credited to us, 0 credited for this second year. We still have $110,000. Did it go down? Did we erode into the principal? The answer is no. So in reality, what happened is we started here, we went up 10%. Then the second year, we didn't get any interest credited. If our third year, let's just extrapolate that we made 5%, right? We made 5% here. So then this would increase by 5,500. So we would actually have 1,115 or $115,000. If I could just learn English, that'd be helpful. Okay, so in this case, we went up, then we had a zero credit, we went sideways, and then we went up again. But you'll notice it never goes down. It'll never go down because not only is our original principal protected, but also our gains are protected. Okay, so that's how an insurance company gets to provide the money for an option. Now let's talk about how the options are actually priced themselves. So I need to create a little room here, so let me pause it. All right, I have some more room here. So let's look at our option trader here. So we've got this guy down here who trades options, right? Now there are two variables that determine the option pricing. One is interest rates. So let's just think about this for a second. If right now the 10-year treasury is around 2% and our bonds, that the bond portfolio insurance company is around 4%, right? If interest rates go up, if they go up, right, overall, then so does our bond portfolio pricing goes up, meaning we have more yield to play with. The spread stays pretty much the same. So if this portfolio, let's say, goes up to 6 and the spread is still 2, that means we have 4%. So 4% will be credited inside the policy, right? So one variable on the pricing is interest rates. The second variable is volatility in the market, the VIX, if you will. And that's really what this option broker is paying attention to. Because if you think about it, when something is stable and predictable, right? Stable and predictable, it's pretty easy to price that because you know what you put in, what you're going to get out. But if something's very volatile and it's all over the place, right? Then you really don't have any clue. So you're gonna give yourself more of a cushion whenever you're investing in it. And so that's what causes option prices to depress, meaning you're not going to, this broker is going to be less apt to let you have freedom in the actual index. He's going to keep more of the juice, if you will, so he can just protect himself, right? So on another factor, a third factor, is which index you actually use. And you'll see that most of the time on index annuities, the S&P 500 is the index of choice. And there's a bunch of other ones that people use, but the reason that the S&P 500 is used the most is, number one, it's the most liquid because it's the largest index, and number two, it has the best pricing on a comparative basis to the other indexes. Okay, so let's go through the 3 different techniques that an insurance company bring to the table. Well, in this case, let's say they're, it's a $100,000 policy at 2%, so they're bringing $2,000 to buy the option. But let's say the broker, and this all, the numbers I'm going to give you are all relatively accurate in the times we're living in with the 10-year treasury and the volatility index. Let's say that the option pricing is actually $4,000, right? Well, guess what? 2,000 doesn't buy 4,000, and so in reality, what would happen here is the floor broker would say, yeah, I'll take your 2,000, but I'm only going to give you 50% of the upside in the S&P, right? Because that's all you're able to buy. All right, so let's just let's go through. Let me just clean up some space here first. All right, so we have a little more room to work with, and you see I put a graph down here. So this is going to depict the S&P 500, right? So this is going to be the S&P 500. So we start off, and we start off with 1,000, and here's the calibration as the market goes up, right? So the market, the market goes, it does its thing, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then over a year. So we're going to say this is a 1-year time period, okay? All right, and let's say that the S&P went up 10% over that time period. Well, that's great, but the option broker said, well, I'm only going to give you 50% of that. So in reality, even though the market went up 10, we're going to get
5. If the market went up 20, we would get 10, right? If the market went down and it was negative down here, then we would get 0. We would get 0 credited for the year, just like we talked before about an option that it's the right but not the obligation. So this, what we're just describing here, this is called a participation rate. Participation rate, which is a percentage, right? So just think percentage. You are participating percentage of the return. Okay, so that is one technique that an insurance company will use to manage this option pricing. What's the second one? Well, a second one is where the broker says, you know what, I've done my algorithm, and no matter what the S&P does, I'm gonna just charge you a flat fee. You're coming to me with 2,000, it's gonna cost 4, but tell you what, I'm just gonna charge you a fee or a spread. So remember how I said before that, remember over here where I said that this spread here is different than the one we're going to talk about later. This spread was the cost of operating an insurance company. Here you're going to see the spread, and in reality what the spread is, it's a fee. It's a fee. Okay, so let's say he says the fee is going to be, the spread is going to be it's going to be 3 or 4%. In this marketplace right now, spreads are actually they're in the 3 to 5% level. Okay, so let's just pick a number. We'll just pick 4. Okay, so if the market goes up, let's say the market goes up 15%, what you would do is you would subtract out the spread, the fee that you're going to have to pay the broker, and you would net out your 11. Okay, now as far as fees go, this is an interesting question. This is something to ponder when you're talking about an index annuity versus a mutual fund or a variable annuity. If indeed this dropped off the planet, right, and you ended up down, you ended up in the negative territory, the minus territory, with a mutual fund, variable annuity, managed money, anything else, if they were charging you an asset fee, right, if they were charging you a fee, would they charge you even when the market went down? Well, of course they would. Of course they would. Here, this fee is not charged. Remember, this is on an option. So if this is in the negative, if this never happened, if this was in the negative, there would be the option would expire worthless, and there would be no fee. So in reality, if there's no gain in an index annuity, guess what? There's no pain. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the third tech. And the third one is if we come to this broker and the broker says, tell you what, you're coming with 2,000, it costs 4,000. I'm just going to give you only so much. I'm only going to give you so much of the upside. In other words, he's going to put a cap. Okay, and so a cap is simply it's limiting your upside. Okay, so here's a situation where, let's say the cap, he says in this environment today, 4% is a fair cap. Well, if this line, this movement from here to here represents a 10% growth, and you're capped at 4, it doesn't matter what happens beyond that line, right? If that represents 4%. If this represents 4, that's your cap. It doesn't matter what this is, 10, 20, or 30% return. It doesn't matter. You're going to get 4. Okay. So a couple things here. What's the mathematical or algorithmically difference between these three? And you know what? The answer is there's not. These are all priced at parity. So what really determines what you see, you see inside your policy, is what the insurance company makes available to you. And so let's think about this for a second. Today, most everything you see are caps. Like if you bought an index annuity today, August 30th, 2011, most everything is going to be calculated on caps. Why? Well, because as we talked earlier, the spreads are above, they're greater than 3%. Well, think about the types of managed money programs, whether it's a mutual fund or a variable annuity or a managed money account. Once you get above 3%, it's very expensive, right? People are just going to not be excited about a fee being north of that. So because all these are priced the same, that isn't very marketable. What about the participation rate? Well, historically, anytime you are less than 50%, you're at 50% or less, which is where we're at now, it just doesn't work, right? People think I'm getting less than half of what the market's going to do, so it just doesn't appeal to anybody. So that's why we go into caps. Now, let's just talk about something. Let's say interest rates go up, right? And the VIX, the volatility index, stabilizes, right? So it's not so much like that, but it becomes a little more stable, right? That's when you're going to see participation rates go up. That's when you're going to see spreads, fees go down, and caps as well. Caps will go up. So once you see that, then you're going to start seeing policies offer some of these other things. But just realize that all the pricing is at parity. Why? Because of this option broker here. He's doing all the pricing the same. It's just a function of marketability. Now, let me just touch on one thing, how we started this off. We said, who took my upside? And I just want to address specifically, right? And so let's talk about that situation where whether it's a cap, right? The market returned 10, they only got 4. Remember when we were talking about the participation rate was only 50%, right? And so people say, well, who got the other 6% here? Or who got the other 50%? See, the insurance company took my money. No, they didn't. And that's what the entire point of this video, this exercise is to show you that we never got it to begin with. We didn't have enough money to buy the entire option, so that's why we didn't get to participate in this component right here or the other 50%. Does that make sense? So that's why who took my upside? Well, nobody did. Nobody took your upside. It's just the way the option pricing works. Okay, so hopefully this helps you understand not only how option pricing works, but how an insurance company gets there and some of the variables that will affect how this stuff all interacts with each other. Okay, thanks for your time.